So last week I said we were going to do a little bit about procrastination today and boundaries, setting healthy boundaries and limits. And as I started to kind of do my workup from the material that I have, I realized that we need to spend a fair amount of time today. We will do some preliminary intro on procrastination like we talked about, but I rediscovered just how important setting, maintaining, and figuring out how to do that with our personal boundaries and limits is to self-esteem, which of course self-esteem is one of those things that is a foundation piece for everything that we do. And it's built into even the goals that I outlined in Conquer the Clutter. So it's going to pop up everywhere. And, you know, life beats us up. Life loves us. Life does a lot of stuff. Sometimes life feels like it's ignoring us. And we're never always in the same spot as the last time we had a look at how we're managing, okay, with the context of our life today. So why is it important to hoarding? One of the things that I learned a long time ago is that with almost every client that I worked with, or clients that anyone else brought to me for a consult, their boundaries, their limits had either been trashed, severely damaged, or they hadn't learned growing up from family of origin experiences how to set and maintain reasonable, healthy boundaries and limits. Many people don't even know what that looks like or what it feels like. All right. And so they're, to use kind of a colloquial term, they're winging it by guess and golly and how they feel. And of course, we don't feel the same way every day, whether you've got mood disorders or not. We live in the context, living with the side effects of what is happening around us in our relationships, in our environment. Just look at the universe, like COVID. Who expected that? And how much has that affected you? All right, positively or negatively. So I'm going to post a few resources on hoarding.ca under the resources tab. I'm going to try to highlight them as in dash or slash podcast material so that you can zero in on them, because there are a lot of resources on the website. They're free. These are things that other people have created and I want to make available for you, either as a standalone resource to work from, or maybe you go back to the author of that resource, and maybe that's material that you want to add to the self-care that I am strongly encouraging every one of you to engage in. This is not like a day at the spa, all right? This is like, how do I throw out the trash in my head that burdens me, that I carry with me, that sometimes is the first default place I go when I have to make any decision, and a simple decision or a difficult decision. It's not just the clutter in our homes, it's the clutter in our lives, relationships. Sometimes we have to clean up some of those as well. We have to perhaps reinforce or just restate certain understandings that we have, that we need, that maybe used to be but have slipped. A little reinforcement there, shoring them up. But we also have to clear out the clutter and the trash in our head. all right? Our values, our beliefs, our fears, our default reactions, okay? Because those are so key to one of the strongest things that is going to sustain you while you make the simplest to the most difficult decisions about the things that are cluttering your environments that we call hoarding. Remember this, hoarding first happens in your head, and your hands and your mind can't do the physical work. You can't do the decision making, all right, if you don't work here first. The hands can't do what the head can't perceive and figure out for a plan. Okay, so I want to start this in the context of something that every single person just about who comes to me, but who dedicates this hour Wednesday mornings. And those numbers are increasing, which shows you this is not just you, all right? This is one of those facts of life. At some point, we are all going to either be severely tempted or we're going to get caught up in some level of procrastination, all right? How many people here, when I did, Sue and I did rather, sorry, the Psychology Today podcast on why can't I get started? And why can't I keep going? Why is it so hard 15 minutes a day? That was about, in part, procrastination. And it's also, in part, about some of the basic, most common causes for procrastination. So we're going to spend maybe 20 minutes just going over those this morning, and then we're going to move on to the resources that I brought. We're going to screen share them. Please don't try to screenshot them. You can go and get a far better copy on hoarding.ca later, okay? All right, so in the book, Conquer the Clutter, on page 94, if you have the book, it asks, do procrastinators think or approach work differently? The first thing I do when a client is experiencing barriers is help them look at whether they have limiting beliefs, or are they doing something that's creating that barrier? In this case, procrastination. What are the main causes of procrastination? And for this, I talked to Dr. Jane Burka. She and Dr. Lenora Ewan wrote Procrastination, Why You Do It and How to Stop Now. And she helped me understand just how important low self-esteem is. So let me read these 3 or 4 sections as an intro to the work we're going to do on learning what healthy boundaries and limits look like, and then how to get started reinforcing ours to get to a healthy place. So main causes of procrastination, low self-esteem. Most procrastination, according to Dr. Burka, is related to problems with self-esteem. People often misunderstand procrastination. Now, as I'm reading this, if any words are key to you, write just down the keywords, okay? Because that's what you want to come back to. That's what you want to look for help with in the particular resources. They think of it as a problem of time management or an issue with lack of willpower or motivation, and so they blame themselves. They get mad at themselves and think that it's a weakness. But Dr. Burka and Dr. Ewan think that procrastination is actually a behavior that protects people in some way. While this seems contradictory to the consequences of procrastination, it really isn't. In some ways, it's more acceptable to feel that you have a problem, that your problem rather, is not getting to work on time, rather than to consider other psychological issues such as fear of failure or success or being controlled. Fear of failure. Let's start with that one. In Procrastination, Why You Do It and What to Do About It Now, Dr. Burka and Dr. Ewan detail a complete list of causes, including how fear of failure is really anxiety. How many people here today are living with some level of anxiety? Okay, about proving yourself, anxiety about proving yourself. When people have a shaky sense of self-esteem or self-worth, they have a lot of anxiety about proving themselves and fear that if they do their very best, it still won't be good enough. That's where the committee in our head takes over and reinforces whatever, no matter how big or how small that sense of insecurity is, all right? That's where we need to really stop the committee. Leave the meeting, as I said before. Just get up and excuse yourself from that meeting. Do whatever is legal and doesn't hurt you physically or mentally to stop the voices of the committee. Then they will feel like a failure again. Many procrastinators think that if you are not at the top, you are a failure. It's an all or nothing approach. How many people on that session, the podcast session that we did a few weeks ago, said that good enough was never good enough? All right, there have to be a certain percentage, and you need to work that out by your comfort level, gradually being kinder and more gentle with yourself. There have to be quite a number of things that when you do them, you only feel you have to do them well enough. All right, not everything has to be ideal, not everything has to be exactly the way you were taught to believe they should be. Okay. If you put off a task or a project, but meet the deadline at the last minute, here's the out, folks, and you end up with a result that's not good enough, so you know that procrastinating to a deadline, not as good as you would have liked, then you can say to yourself, well, if I had more time, it was really time, I ran out of time, it would have been much better. This is sort of an out or a safety cushion. Ironically, it doesn't feel good or safe, but it does protect your self-esteem. There's that self-esteem, all right? If you're determining your self-worth by what you produce, then producing something is like having a gun pointed at you every time. So you're only worth the quality of what you produce. You feel that you as a person are being evaluated based on your results. A lot of people have unfortunately grown up with the feeling that their worth depends on what they do, how well they perform, and what they produce. If your worth is defined that way, then you really can't afford to do your best. Think about that. You really can't afford to take that risk because you can never control the outcome. Stuff happens, all right? And see what happens. If it isn't good enough, and in the end, then you have a big dent in your sense of self-worth and self-esteem. How's that working for you if you're using that very self-esteem to motivate yourself? Okay, because if you don't feel worthy of the results that you're looking for, and you always allow yourself to be distracted rather than deal with, these don't have to be major issues. These are subtle little ways that we flatten our tires every day and then blame ourselves for us not being able to get to the results, to the places we wanted to achieve that day. A slow leak is enough. It's enough to take away the results that you're working so hard and you're trying to persevere with. In my practice, I have observed how these fears create a very real trap for those suffering from hoarding disorder. To any degree, even just hoarding behavior. It doesn't have to tick enough boxes to be a disorder, all right? Unconditional love and acceptance in childhood, which promotes self-worth, is often lacking in those who suffer from hoarding disorder. If my ability and self-worth hinge on the excellence of what I produce, unconditional love and acceptance can unfortunately become increasingly uncommon and the basis for a lot of internal anxiety. We will also sabotage things that internally at an unconscious level, all right? At an unconscious level, we don't feel worthy of. We feel insecure about. The committee, all right, distracts and subverts. And for those of you just joining us today, the committee is all of those naysayers in your head. You're not hearing voices, but they never go away. They're on a tape. And sometimes we listen to them so long. And they don't have to be horrible people. These could be people who loved us, who really thought they were doing the best, all right? We can't blame them, but we can take responsibility for not listening to that advice anymore, all right? We just get up. When you hear the committee and they are criticizing you, they're assessing what your thoughts are, what your plan is, how well you're doing it, all those shoulds. Shoulds is a word you're watching for, all right? Because shoulds is a shovel that's going to dig you in deeper. That's the committee. And what I said in a past podcast, because there are a number of new people here today, what I said in a past, think of yourself as actually sitting in a committee room. Visualize it, make it concrete so you can deal better with it. And then watch all the groups, all the pros and cons, all the fears, values, and beliefs that are being expressed, all right, by that committee. And then quiet them. Even if you have to stick your hands, your fingers in your ear and go, nah, 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 nah. Do whatever you have to quiet them, and then excuse yourself from the meeting. Go someplace, do a little bit of self-talk. In my book, I talk about going and standing in front of the bathroom mirror and saying things to myself that the people I loved and trusted the most, who valued me, had said to me, giving myself those messages. Get yourself fortified and then go back. And every time you hear the committee, quiet them, all right? They're gone. They don't deserve a crack at your life. They had a crack at their own life, all right? So don't let them subvert you, all right? So where am I here? Okay, so fear of success, okay? Can you imagine that? Fear of success seems like a contradictory because most people think that everybody wants success, that being successful will make you happy. According to Dr. Burka and Dr. Ewan, however, being successful brings along many new experiences. Some people are afraid of those experiences. For example, if you're promoted and now you're the boss, then the buck stops with you. If you're retired and you're trying to do work, you're trying to make plans, the buck stops with you. You have to make the decisions. You have that responsibility. You're in your own spotlight. And this adds to people's anxiety, all right? Another reason people are afraid of success is that they worry that they will be expected to be increasingly more successful. They think of success as being like an escalator. Once you step on, you can't get off. It feels like the pressure will just build and build. And a good analogy is someone who's training to be a high jumper. Once the person clears the bar and sets a new record, the bar gets raised. So there's always a next level. Some people feel the need to avoid that kind of pressure because it's a loss of control. When does it stop? And if it keeps rising and you feel taxed at this level, of course you're going to anticipate that you're not going to be able to keep that up. So you might as well get off the escalator on floor number 1. In addition to the above reasons, some people feel they don't deserve success. That can be the voices from the committee as well. They feel that they're not worthy of success. They were always told, no, you didn't do that right. This is the way you do it. This is the correct way to do it. It doesn't count if you do it. If you do it that way, it's not good enough. It's never going to be good enough. All right. So when you learn that and you integrate that, and that's one of the backstories that you're half listening to and worrying about, of course you're going to be afraid of success. All right. How are you going to know it's a success? It's easy to see how procrastination interferes with success, but it's not as easy to see the above reason behind procrastination. So we're going to talk about fear of being controlled. Procrastination is an indirect way of saying, you can't make me do it. All right? A way of not being controlled. You are doing things on your own time, on your own schedule, in your own way. And for some people, going along with that, with what someone else expects, is an insult to their autonomy and their self-esteem. For some people, their self-esteem depends on the sense of autonomy. In other words, I am my own person, and you can't tell me what to do, even when those people are long gone. All right? So if they do something on time and meet someone else's expectations, they feel like they have compromised themselves. They feel that they have given in or been taken over, or that that person who controlled them, influenced them, criticized them so much when they were alive is somehow still with them and still in charge. Fear, I want to read fear of failure. All right, did fear of failure. All right, so how can you tell if you fear being controlled? Many people have talked to me about this. I live alone. I don't have to do it. I have to do it on my own time. There's nobody I have to account to. There's nobody I have to consider. That can also be part of this fear of being controlled. A key is to look at where you procrastinate, what you're not doing. You do some things every day. For example, you brush your teeth probably twice a day, whereas you leave other things undone. Putting off things that someone else asks you to do is a sign that you fear being controlled. Putting off things that somebody else used to control, criticize, or nag you about unrelentingly is also a fear of being controlled, and you're carrying it with you out of its context in today's life. If you put off things that represent bureaucracy, if you don't do your taxes on time, pay parking tickets, or file paperwork when it's required, and it's not required every single piece of paper, folks, okay? We're not going to perfectionism. That's a sign that you don't want to be controlled. As I've noted, when I started working with individuals who hoard, I rarely find that their income tax has been filed in the past 4 years. And I wonder if this might indicate that a fear of being controlled actually is a common experience for those who hoard. I encounter frequently clients who are overwhelmed, feeling broken and flawed, and questioning their own competence. If the world doesn't feel like a safe, predictable place, can people be left feeling that they're not up to managing it? If the fear of control is part of their fundamental beliefs, how would this play out in the form of procrastination? That feeling starts at birth, and then it expands in the family. It reproduces itself in school, in the workplace environment, and in the world as a whole. In certain ways, we have to accept that we're not entirely safe. But when people don't have a core sense of security, when you get criticized or corrected for most things that you do, that's a really ripe foundation for a lack of self-esteem, or having to fight really hard for your sense of self-esteem. All right. Everything you do then becomes far more highly charged. They're genuinely worried about how they'll manage, and they don't seem to have the foundation of the ground under their feet. And so procrastination is a safe place to rest. All right. All right. So can I get people? I have 7 comments in the chat box. Let's have a look. Which chapter am I reading from? I'm reading from the chapter on procrastination. I think I said it was page 74, or was the first page. Have a look at it, Shoshana. So page 98, chapter 5, procrastination. Got a lot of helpers here. Thank you. Okay. So the next thing, Jim, can we put up resource number 1? We're going to screen share this quiz, and I'd like each of you, now if you're in pairs or groups somewhere, as some of you are, do this in a way that you are accountable to yourself and you can maintain some privacy. I'm going to give you a minute to get a paper and a pencil. All right, and we're just going to do a quick go through here. The better copy of this is on hoarding.ca, and I just want you to get a rough idea, okay, of where we are with a self-assessment for healthy boundaries.
Can you see that there okay, Elaine?
I certainly can, yeah. I've got my paper copy in front of me, but this is good. Okay, so the total, the maximum that you could possibly score here is 140. All right. And so answer each of these questions for yourself. Just put the number down. It doesn't matter. And put them in a row, bottom to top, so that you can then have a look at this more carefully and think about what each of these questions means. Answer your first response. Don't think about them. All right. So the scaling, those columns off to the right, 0 for never, 1 for rarely, 3 for sometimes, 5 for often, you can see it along the top, 7 for almost always, okay? Question number 1, do you feel stressed out, overwhelmed, burnt out? Give you a second and just put your score down. Like right now. We're not talking generally, we're talking currently. You can only work with the energy you have right now, today. Would you do most anything to avoid hurting others? Do you feel as if your kids, your mate, your parents, or others, important others in your life, run your life? Important others could be a boss, could be colleagues, could be good and not so good friends. Do you feel as if you are never caught up, or as if your life is not your own? Do you feel taken advantage of by those you love? Do you resent others for being so demanding and inconsiderate? Do others' needs seem much more urgent than yours? Do you see yourself as the only one who can help, and that you therefore must, should say yes? Do you tend to meet others' needs before your own? Do you question the legitimacy of your own needs? Or do you second guess them? Do you hate to disappoint others' expectations? Are you secretly afraid that if you don't do what others ask of you, that they will leave you? Doesn't have to necessarily be leave you physically. It can be withdraw emotionally as well. Do you say okay or say nothing when you would rather not do something for someone because you don't want a confrontation? So many people don't understand the positives of confrontation and conflict. Conflict does not have to mean hurt feelings. It does not have to mean an ugly argument or ugly, hurtful feelings. It just means you don't feel the same way, you don't believe the same things, and you need to establish some middle ground between you and the other. Do you deep down believe that if you don't anticipate someone's needs and provide services for them, they won't want to be with you? So it becomes the price for belonging. Do you try to convince yourself that your feelings aren't real, or that you shouldn't have those feelings, or that your feelings don't matter compared to the other person's feelings? And does that all get to be an overwhelming quagmire that you just shut down? It's easier to give in. Are you very distressed if someone disapproves of you? Are you very distressed if someone seems as if they don't like you? If someone criticizes you, do you automatically believe that their criticism is true? Do you let others define what your behavior means? Example, you don't really love me if you won't do this. Yeah. Yeah. Is there a question 15? No. No, there isn't. Good for you, Lynn. Nope, there was no question 15. That's cute. Good for you for noticing it. That's funny. Yeah. Okay. All right. So at the bottom of this, this is from the work of Dr. Jane Bolton. Meredith Brophy says, Lynn, you passed the secret test. Oh, I so enjoy you guys. That's so funny. All right. So now you can either send it privately or you can send it to everyone. Give me some idea of what the scores were here, if you're comfortable, okay? You can send it privately, remember, okay? Okay. So, all right, so Let me open up the chat box here. There we go. Okay. All right. So to Maureen, if you want to look at the form on the screen, the numbers at the top were 0 for column 1, 1 for column 2, 3 for column 3, 5 for column 4, 7 for column 5. Okay, for those of you who said, yikes, or, ooh, it's not the end of the world. This is all rethinkable. This is all manageable and learnable, because we do have that ability. Remember, one of the goals that I ask you to set for yourself is to be growing, learning, developing human beings, and to pick something that you want to do better, you want to be better at, or you want to know more about. Maybe you start with the work of Dr. Jane Bolton. All right, she is with this includes, let me see here, I'll read it at the bottom. Dr. Jane Bolton, a marriage and family therapist, master results coach, and contemporary psychoanalyst, is dedicated to supporting people in the fullest expression of their authentic selves. This includes discovery, understanding, acceptance, expression, and empowerment of self. All right, go to her. I guess she has a website, drjanebolton.com. All right, go and look at some of her work on setting healthy boundaries and limits. Okay, so let's move along. We can take that down now, Jim. There is another one. Can you put up the other one, Jim? The second, just to give them. So this, poor Jim, this came in sideways. Oh, you did it. Good for you. Okay, so the other thing I thought might be a good option. So when you posted this, Jim, did you post the whole thing or one page at a time? I just want them to have a look so they can go on the website after, and then they can do this in depth.
These aren't on the site yet. I just have them on my desktop.
That's okay. Do you have page number 2 of this one?
I do.
Okay, I want you to see what this resource looks like so you know whether you want to be bothered. Okay, so page number 2 talks about just some highlight questions. It looks like there might be about 10 highlighted questions there to figure out where on that scale are you? Weaker boundaries or no boundaries? And then the next, at the bottom of this page, some questions to ask yourself that might indicate, no, you know what, you're in the range of healthier boundaries. And Jim, page number 3, another thing that I really want you to watch out for, however, because boundaries are in response to specific situations, all right? So they change by people, they change by your own feelings of security, your own ability to be present and aware, which, you know, alters, that changes period to period in our life. So it's not a great thing also to have rigid boundaries, all right? And again, if we have the next page, okay, and there's a way here to tally and to score yourself. Now these are just tools. These are not the definitive work on boundaries and setting boundaries, okay? So let's spend a little more time on how to create healthy boundaries. Okay, we don't have this one, Jim. This is just going to be me working from a resource that I discovered and have kind of made some changes to. Okay, so now we're going to talk about, we need to close that so people don't. Jim, we need the chat box. Is that chat box open to everyone?
Should be.
Yeah, so I want people to be able to access it, but I don't want people to be able to see names. Can we close that?
I'm not sure what you mean by seeing names. You mean in the chat?
It says participants 29, and it's got people's names here. Can we?
Oh, okay. Well, you can just close that. I think I
I'm
don't
afraid of closing the whole screen. Okay, okay, good. There we are. All right. How to create healthy boundaries. All right. So there are different kinds of boundaries, and our life experiences and our current state of mind to some degree dictate where we have to put the line, as it were. Okay, so what are boundaries? The easiest way to think about boundaries is as a property line. We've all seen no trespassing signs, and we internally, when we set a boundary, are basically setting a limit. You can be this far in my personal property, myself, or you as an individual can be closer, or you can be further away. So they define the amount of physical and emotional space that you allow between yourself and specific others. Personal boundaries help you decide what type of communication, behavior, and interaction are acceptable in this circumstance with this person or this group. And why are they important? Well, they're important because they are an indicator of, as I said before, that fundamental piece that we rely on, and that's our self-respect and our self-esteem. And they help us practice and reinforce and stay within our own healthy level of self-care and self-respect. They also communicate to the other person where the limit is. And if that person does not respect that and they keep pushing it, then that is a signal to you that this is someone who you need to keep an eye on, all right, no matter how close they are. If they use manipulative communication strategies that make you feel guilty or make you question yourself, then if you're constantly going on that defensive, that's another indicator that you need to watch this person, all right? They also help you to make time and space for positive interactions, because when you get that alarm sensation, then that might indicate to you that you need to in some healthy way, you need a time out from this person so that you can go back and you can rethink, what are my needs in this situation? Because it's all well and good to be a compassionate, empathetic individual, but we can't buy relationships by capitulating. We can't buy relationships by repeatedly or continually ignoring our own needs. If we do that, we build up resentments, all right? And those resentments fester. And when they fester, they will come out in some way. And also, there are some people, one of the things too, if you start going online and looking at good sources of information about healthy boundaries and limits, you're going to see a corollary with narcissists, all right? And the world has no shortage of narcissists, all right? So, and people can be on a continuum of narcissism, all right? And so, You want to be able to pick up those signals. And the first signal, people, the first signal is your own reaction. So trust it. For heaven's sakes, trust it. Don't second guess it. If somebody makes you start to question yourself, questioning yourself is not a bad thing. Being put on the defensive, however, repeatedly or continually, they're claiming your personal space. You need to take a time out. You need to go back. You need to regroup. You need to figure out, who am I today moving forward and what are my needs? And my needs are no more important than your needs, but my needs need to be factored in. It's an also, it's an equal, all right? And if you're not feeling that, you either need to watch this person or you need to rethink how secure you are in your own knowledge of yourself and what you're worth. When you sacrifice your self-esteem, you sacrifice your own needs repeatedly, you're not buying, you might be buying no confrontation, all right? But you are not, you're buying that relationship. And you will pay the price for that, and so will they, because resentment, all right, resentment breeds contempt, all right? So to set limits in a relationship in a healthy way. So who am I? Physical boundaries include not just your body, but your sense of personal space, your sexual orientation, and your privacy. And they are expressed through things like what you wear, all right? Your shelter, the condition of your home, noise tolerance, verbal instruction, and body language. All of those are very powerful. Remember that when you break down how communication affects us, how we pick up on it, and the messages it sends us, know that verbal communication is a small piece. What people say is a small piece. Body language is somewhere between in the 60s to the 70% of how we integrate a message. So also respect how you're picking up the other person's body language as well, because that can be a very passive way of influencing us to compromise our needs as well. Remember last week, we talked about your A needs, your B needs, your C needs. A needs being, this is who I am. This is what I need in every transaction with myself or anyone else. All right. And I can't sacrifice those. If I sacrifice that, I am on a very slippery slope to a place I don't want to go. My B needs are important to me. They don't have to happen every moment of every day like my A needs. All right. But they do need to happen the better part of the time, and they're not negotiable. I can do without some of them periodically for short periods of time, but they are also who I am. All right, and soon it may be a longer road to unhappiness, okay, or discontent, but I'm on that road if I'm giving up those and sacrificing those. And that can be shared space. That can be that your home and your space reflects the needs of everybody else in that space. And so you can, sometimes when you hear me speak, you're thinking about your needs for perhaps clutter, your needs for your things. But if you live with other people, this also means their needs. Our need to respect when we're part of a pair, or we're part of a family, or we're part of a more distant relationship, all right? That other people get their needs met as well. And we can't take away their space, their right to peace of mind and safety because of our needs. So it's that balance. This teeter-totter goes both ways, all right? Your home should reflect who you are, the touchstones that give you emotional connection, safety, and enough comfort, and make it a haven for you, all right? But also for the other person. Are you giving too much, or are you expecting too much of others? That's the balance we're talking about today, all right? Okay, other examples of physical boundaries. Obviously, inappropriate touching, such as unwanted sexual advances, but it could be verbal as well. Name calling, making somebody feel guilty, being dependent. Remember that dependence breeds resentment, all right? Looking through others' personal files and emails, which is one of the reasons why it's so important when I'm coaching you to sort through your things, that you feel the right to say, I don't know what's in this material, but I know it's been important enough for me to keep. All right, it isn't just fluff paper. And I would rather choose who helps me go through it, because that way I won't feel exposed. That way, through this whole process, it won't raise my anxiety, or as the next thing, something personal, or pictures, or notes, or your journal, or private information. All right, that's why it's so important to choose your clutter coach. And it's always easier with someone else. It's always easy with another person, but you have the right to choose that person, and you need not to have to justify it. You shouldn't have to explain that. Just say, assertive language. Remember, we talked a little bit about that last week. I would prefer, I'm not comfortable. I would prefer to think about who's going to help me with this, if anybody's going to help me. I would prefer to try it on my own first and see how I do, and then I will decide who helps me. All right. Emotional and intellectual boundaries. Now, this is a big one for people that I work with. These boundaries protect your sense of self-esteem. All right, so when you're discovered, or you feel exposed, or you're living in fear of being discovered, that's a horrible, horrible attack on your self-esteem. And it's that waiting for the other shoe to drop to be discovered. And the ability to separate your feelings from others. When you have weak emotional boundaries, it's like getting caught in a storm, all right, with no protection. You expose yourself to being greatly affected by others' words. The more vulnerable, the lower and more at risk your self-esteem, the more others' words, maybe disproportionately, thoughts and actions you end up feeling bruised, wounded, and battered. So sometimes we can overthink this, all right? We can over apply a meaning to it, where the person said, I like your hair, or it's not the right, I don't know what your barber did, I don't know what your hairdresser did. And we make it a bigger meaning, all right? Because we are in a vulnerable state, and it's usually not a temporary vulnerable state. We're not feeling good about ourselves to begin with, and then somebody makes an innocent comment, and we apply a huge meaning to it, okay? Barriers to boundary setting. Are any of these present in your life or in your relationships? Fear of rejection, okay? And ultimate abandonment. Are we afraid? Do we have feelings of abandonment? It doesn't mean somebody left you. It can mean that somebody was never available to you. Maybe they were busy criticizing you, or maybe they were busy correcting you. Maybe they were busy doing something else that didn't allow you to figure out, who am I today? And if you didn't figure that out as a child because you were always following the expectations of others, it's high time, okay? It's high time that you allowed yourself. Maybe you sacrificed that in a marriage or in a relationship. Maybe you got used to that as the price for this relationship. Maybe you wanted that relationship to stay longer than was healthy, longer than its natural lifespan. And maybe you suffered consequences that you carry with you today, moving forward. All right. Maybe you became dependent on others who corrected you. All right. And it wasn't a negative. It was you became, it felt secure. And now that person can no longer be with you for one reason or another. All right. And now you're in that void. It's all right. It's all right. You are enough. Just as you are enough. And if you're here today, then you're looking for the answers that you need. All right. Okay. Another barrier is fear of confrontation. Confrontation, like procrastination, has been given a bad rap. Okay. Confrontation just means that you sat down and you thought about what your needs were, and then you actually figured out what maybe the best approach was to approach whoever you need to find some common ground with. Where is that middle ground? There's always middle ground. There's always compromise possible. Guilt. Do you feel guilty when you don't meet the needs of others? Do you feel noble? There's a big one. Watch that one, folks. Do you feel noble when you give in? All right. That's not a good thing to do. Watch that feeling of noble. Noble, that feeling of noble carries with it a feeling of entitlement. I did this for you. Even if you never say it, that feeling of, that noble feeling of helping others. Never give, never give. If you expect anything, better treatment, love, whatever, never give anything that you can't give with a loving and generous heart, expecting nothing in return. All right. We were taught, not taught healthy boundaries. Okay. You can't hit a target if you don't know what it looks like. And if in your family, and you don't have to badmouth your family. You don't have to criticize or demean your family. You know, dysfunctional family, the better question is, in what way was your family dysfunctional? Because every family, people are imperfect human beings. Every family was dysfunctional in some way. All right. And the only person who can parent us effectively is ourselves, because our parents didn't know exactly who we were and what we needed. They took their best shot at it. All right. And then it's time for us to pick up the mantle and parent ourselves. And learning, who am I today moving forward? I don't care if you're 70 or 80. I don't care how old you are. You deserve it today. Start parenting yourself. And it starts with healthy boundaries and limits. So if there's anybody you need to have a talk with, sit down and figure out what you need to say, who you are and what you need. What are your A needs? What are those? I'm sorry, you can never call me names. You can never demean me. You can never make me feel less than. You can never expect me to carry you. All right? Whatever they are, what are your A needs? Don't put those on the table. What are your B needs? You know, most of the time I expect people to be reasonable and not to take out bad moods or not to whatever. All right. Most of the time I expect that they financially share their resources, that they don't always look to me or somebody else. Most of the time I expect that they share the work. Most of the time I expect that when I send them an email or make a phone call, they will actually get back to me. All right. Most of the time I expect that they will speak up if I'm doing or saying, or there's something they don't like about a situation. They won't hijack me and bushwhack me later like I should have mind read. Okay. What are your B needs? All right. Know those, because you can't do without those for very long. You don't need them every minute of every day and every single transaction, but you do need them. They are who you are. And they are a huge piece of the foundation of your self-respect and self-esteem. Okay? Your C needs. What's the icing on the cake? Okay? If this could happen, it would just be like the icing on it. It would be like wonderful. All right? This would be like my dreams came true. Those we can trade. Those we can trade with. Okay? So what are they? Know what they are. Go back and think and do your homework on yourself. How are you feeling right now? Has COVID taken a toll and you're feeling really vulnerable? You're feeling really lonely? You're feeling really like you've got cabin fever beyond belief? What is the context of right now doing to you? Factor that in. Are you more vulnerable or are you less vulnerable? I know I feel a lot better because my hairdresser's going to see me on Monday. Who knew I had so much gray? Anyway, okay, so what is it? And what are you looking forward to? All right, is it time to celebrate with somebody and say, okay, you know, whatever the grievances, let's just park them for now. This stay-at-home thing is being lifted gradually. Let's go out and just enjoy it before we start any heavy talk. That's okay too. Okay, choose your time. Okay, so we're going to just wind up on this. Assess the current state of your boundaries. Here's why, all right? Because healthy boundaries allow you to have a high level of self-esteem and self-respect. If you don't respect yourself, nobody else will, all right? Share personal information gradually in a mutually sharing and trusting relationship. Protect physical and emotional space from intrusion. That may have to do with your stuff and going through it. Privacy can be important. Have an equal partnership where responsibility and power are shared. If you've got something to say, you better say it, all right, because it's going to come out in your body language otherwise. And it will build resentment. Be assertive, not aggressive, all right? Confidently and truthfully say yes or no and be okay when others say no to you. Separate your needs, your thoughts, your feelings and desires from those of others. You are not a clone to anyone. Even if you're a twin, you are not. Recognize that your boundaries and needs are different from others. They need to be factored in and they need to be respected. They don't always need to rule the day, however. Compromise in relationships is hugely important. Empower yourself to make healthy choices and take responsibility for yourself. Tips for setting healthy boundaries. We're going to wind up with this. When you identify the need to set a boundary, do it clearly, calmly, firmly, respectfully, and in as few words as possible. Don't justify, don't get angry, don't apologize for the boundary you're setting. You are not responsible for the other person's reaction to the boundary you're setting. You're not responsible. You made me feel bad. No, that was where you went, okay? I'm sorry you're sad, but I'm not responsible for it. Okay, and I'm not going to take responsibility for it. You are only responsible for communicating your boundary in a respectful manner. If it upsets them, know it is their problem. That's an issue they have. Some people, especially those accustomed to controlling, abusing, or manipulating you, might test you, even if they don't think they're doing it, even if they don't mean overtly to do it. If that's the way you feel, you have to take it as that's the message. Plan on it, expect it, but remain firm. Remember, your behavior must match the boundaries you're setting. You cannot successfully establish a clear boundary if you send mixed messages by apologizing or backing away from it, all right? At first, you will probably feel selfish, guilty, or embarrassed when you set a boundary. You feel awkward, comfortable. Do it anyway and remind yourself that you have a right to your own space, your own self-care. Setting boundaries takes practice and determination. Don't let anxiety, fear, or guilt prevent you from taking care of yourself. You're also taking care of the other person because you're setting the foundation for a healthy relationship. That path to capitulation and being a goodie, all right, that is headed places where there will be disruption and conflict later. You're also taking care of the other person. When you feel anger or resentment or find yourself whining or complaining, you probably need to set a boundary. Listen to yourself, determine what you need to do or say, and then communicate it assertively. Either do it in person, that's always best, face-to-face, or write the person a note and tell them you're sending them this note. Don't do it in an email. Send a note and tell them the reason you're doing this is because it's so hard for you to do this, but you really need to. These are things you need to say. Learning to set healthy boundaries takes time. It's a process. Set them in your own time frame, not when someone else tells you, like me. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just giving you the information. You decide when and where. Develop a support system of people who respect your right to set boundaries. This group, for instance. Eliminate toxic persons from your life. Those who want to manipulate, abuse, or control you. And you might then want to look into some of the information about narcissism, okay? That was rife in the next pages of setting healthy boundaries and limits, okay? So I'll see you. Oh, we've got a few questions. If for anybody who wants to stick around, let's look at these questions. Okay, go up. Am I the only one having difficulty seeing the pages? So Shoshana, some people are looking for them as well. Give Jim about 2 hours and then go to hoarding.ca. All of these quizzes, okay, are going to be on that site. And this document that I just read from is by Harriet, Harriet Lerner, all right? And they're going to be on the website as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. When you post
amazing class, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I started it to work from just the book, and then I thought, well, you can check and see what others, and some people really have put together really good, succinct messaging and tools. And so healthy boundaries and limits are something that the more vulnerable we feel, and so many people feel vulnerable, they've gone beyond being judged by their clutter. They've now voiced over all the things they would be afraid would happen to them, and it's now their own voice. And that's when you really get into your soul, all right? And it's time we take that space back, all right? If we're alive, we're allowed to be flawed, imperfect human beings trying to be better. Okay, they were all thank yous. Wonderful. We'll see you next week, folks, and we'll do more on procrastination, all right? And I'd be interested in feedback throughout the week. Send it to my email about what you found with boundaries and limits. And thank you for those people who sent me pictures of their environment. I will take that information and I'm going to gather kind of the collection of pictures, and coming up in a few more podcasts, we'll be talking about how to problem solve certain types of things, clutter or piles in particular areas of the house, okay, so that we'll be trying to mix it up with more tips and tools, okay? Okay, Take care. Bye, everybody.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Elaine.
Have a great week.
Thanks, Elaine.
You too.
You're welcome. Bye.